Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 152. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Friday, Steelers Nation. Less than a week to go until training camp. Tuesday, the day the team reports, and then Wednesday, the actual first day of practice. But a lot to talk about until then. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good. You got your new binoculars all set, and your waterproof paper, and a new umbrella.
Yeah, when I ordered the new waterproof paper, that's kind of my sign that camp is right around the corner. So that came in earlier this week. So really excited, and especially excited to return to Latrobe, PAs. I'm sure many Steeler fans are.
Yeah, and I guess what? It kicks off on Tuesday with them. Is it Monday or Tuesday they report?
Tuesday they report, Wednesday first day practice.
All right, then Mike Tomlin will probably have that press conference after the conditioning test and all like that, and we'll find out if any players go on PUP and get all the arrivals out of the way, those sort of interviews, and then it'll be time to get after it there at on Wednesday there.
Absolutely, but Dave, we have plenty to talk about until then. Ben Roethlisberger speaking with the Post-Gazette today. A lot of interesting commentary there. Just really briefly, though, off the top, everyone's favorite things to talk about this week, stadium names in Madden ratings. And so the Madden ratings, and it's been this, I think I mentioned this earlier in the week, this slow, annoying drip of Madden ratings, and it's really frustrating to no end. And we won't spend much time on it because it doesn't mean a lot, but I think it does mean something. I talked about that at Terrible Take the other day. But TJ Watt, the highest rated Steeler at 96, Cam Hayward at 93, Najee Harris, Deonte Johnson, the highest on offense at 85 each. And so there's a brief overview of the Madden ratings for those who will play this year.
Hey, and make no mistake about it. This matters to, people say, why do you post about this? And why do you talk about, a video game? These players don't think the players don't look at this and care about it. I mean, they do. And that's why it is presented, how it is presented and dripped out and all like that. Cause look, I haven't played Madden in years. It means absolutely nothing to me. I think it means less to you at your age. Even you probably played the game quite a bit, growing up there. People younger than you, they're a lot of people are consumed with Madden. So, and obviously a lot of these players, they care what it is. They either take it as a badge of honor or a sign of disrespect and that kind of thing there. So that's why it's, I don't want to say newsworthy, but topical, and that's why you see it all over the place because of it. It makes no difference to me, but we do pass along the info because it is relevant for this kind of year. I'm with you though. I wish they drop them all at one time, but that's probably not good. That's probably not good for ratings that way, right?
They used to do it all at once, but they realized let's try to dominate the whole story by doing this day by day, this unveiling, which is just very silly, but I understand why they do it. That's the way the game is played. I think, and my point in the Terrible Take the other day was, perception matters. And there were so many kids, myself was one of them, a decade plus ago, that grew up playing Madden, that learned the game, learned about the players through Madden. And so the ratings kind of matter about, who's the best and who does what well and how effective can a player be. So I think in that sense, they actually do matter. There's a pride element, a recognition element of it as well. So I know, I got a million comments back. It's a video game. No one cares. It doesn't matter. I promise you these players care. You hear them react and you hear them, happy with the rating or upset about the rating. Players care.
They do. They really, really do. And, what do people think they should or shouldn't is a topic for another day, but they do care what their rating is.
Yep. So, don't want to spend too much time on that, but that is some of the notable Madden ratings. Still more to come. I think quarterbacks still have not been unveiled, so we'll see what Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett are. Probably will not be rated too terribly high, but we'll let you know whenever that news I guess that's today. It probably
Yeah,
drops.
I think it is. And poor Derek White. I hope they I haven't seen his yet. Hopefully that drops as part of the other positional players today, because if not, I bet the other Watt brothers will sure let him know about that he got left out of the Madden ratings there.
Right. But let's talk about one of the big stories of the day. Ben Roethlisberger speaking within the Post-Gazette in an interview with Ron Cook, a really good article by him, touched on a variety of topics. And Dave, although Ben has retired, passive Ben has not retired. He is back in full force there. A lot of passive aggressiveness, a little bit of shade being thrown in certain respects. Probably one of the more interesting comments in that regard was talking about his retirement. And Ben said that he believed he went out on his own terms after, of course, a really long, successful, and Hall of Fame career. But talked about how it felt like he didn't feel the love from Kevin Colbert at the end, telling Ron Cook, quote, "It was mostly Kevin Colbert. He was ready to move on. I think Mike Tomlin was a little ready to move on, but I think he was okay with me coming back. I think Mr. Rooney really wanted me to come back last year to play." And so a little bit of a shot at Kevin Colbert about the perception that Colbert really didn't want him back.
It'd be interesting to have the full context, right, of the whole. I would imagine that this was a recorded kind of phone interview of some sorts here, but it sure is kind of framed in the sense that Colbert really wanted me out the door. Tomlin sort of wanted me out the door. Kind of aspect in there. Now, look, even before last season, a lot of people said, Ben shouldn't come back. Is it the right decision? Yada, yada. I personally thought that Roethlisberger gave this team the best chance at doing anything last year. They weren't going to go out and get another expensive quarterback. And even if they had drafted a quarterback, that wouldn't have probably played out as well as the actual season played out. And obviously Ben had to miss a game because of COVID, and looking back at his performance and how quickly he got the ball out and wasn't able to push the football down the field. He still had a lot of do they win a handful of those games if Ben's not on the offensive, not under center for those games? Probably not, right? I mean, Ben brought him back in quite a few games, and they almost even won the game against the Vikings there at the end as well too. So it was a mix of, probably the right guy, at least for last season, to give them a chance. But on the flip side, it still wasn't good enough.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think everyone understands what happened last year. The offense had so many issues, so many ills, and a lot of those were caused by Ben. But at the same time, he's the one that was able to rally this team, and he set career highs in game-winning drives and fourth quarter comebacks and things like that. And so, the stat that I gave was how good this team was in one-score games, 15-4-1 over the last 2 years. That's the best mark in football. And that will be the, I think, toughest thing to replace, is those really, when the chips are down, those tight moments, the potential, game winning or closeout kind of drive. Will you have a quarterback who's able to just get the job done? And Ben was still able to do that the last 2 years. Now, other parts of the game, the vertical passing game, mobility, those things certainly, weren't things Ben was doing well the last two seasons. But I had no problem with Ben coming back and being the guy last year, but I think this was the year to move on, and obviously that's what happened.
And look, had the defense been better last year, maybe they win another game or two at a minimum, right?
Sure. Or if the offense was better too, then obviously they would have won more games too.
Right. All that aside, though, I think even regardless, you get into that playoff game against the Chiefs. It's still, I don't care who how healthy or what, that still would have been a very tough game to win in the playoffs there. But look, I mean, here we are right at camp, and the overview, how it's portrayed with this interview is going to come off probably more negative than it is positive, right?
I think so, because I think some of the comments about Colbert and the touchdown throw to Santonio Holmes and some of Ben's commentary on the state of the game today will get the most play overall. But, I can always appreciate players being honest and saying how they feel and being candid. And Ben's never been one to shy away from that. And especially in retirement, I don't think he's going to shy away from what he thinks and how he feels.
Do you think the throw to Santonio Holmes still gets the respect that it and always has, hasn't it?
Well, I understand his point in saying the catch is talked about more than the throw. I mean, I
Okay.
get that. I mean, it feels a little petty to really try to insert yourself into that and say it's not talked about enough on my end. But I get what he's saying, but it feels like it doesn't need to be said.
Right. I mean, that's one of those plays, along with obviously the Harrison intercept. That game is just full of monumental Super Bowl plays that aren't going to be soon forgotten, I don't think.
Right. But I agree that the catch. You agree too. The catch is talked about more than Ben's actual throw. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, but I mean, I've made references of the actual throw in the past, and look,
right.
I mean, that whole drive, I mean, was pretty incredible,
Right. But globally, like big picture, national media, the highlights, like whenever you watch the highlights, you really don't see like the throw. You just see the tail end of the catch and Holmes actually making the catch. And that's probably what Ben is trying to get at.
All right. Look, I mean, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's going to get his day, Yeah,
I guess what kind of irked me about that comment was that won the Super Bowl. Like if your mantra is all I care about is winning, and I believe that's true, then don't talk about how your throw needs to be talked about more. You won a Super Bowl, you won the game. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and people will probably, as they pick this interview apart, and I think it's already happening, saying some inconsistencies of things that, contradictions that Ben's making in that article alone and all. I understand why they did this interview. I mean, the timing and all, going back to Latrobe, and heck, this is the first time the team will open up training camp without 7 since 2003, right? I mean, it is pretty monumental and all like that. And I once again, I understand the timing of it. I understand why the article is actually why the interview is being dropped actually today on this Friday. It's a good time to drop it, right? I mean, it's all that's going to be talked about today, at least
right. Barring any sort of Deshaun Watson news coming in.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was a good interview, and it's always good to hear from Ben, and I'm sure we'll hear from him. Actually, I don't know how much we'll hear from him in the future. So, maybe it's good to get that commentary now. And again, I can appreciate a player being honest and just giving his actual true and candid thoughts. So what else did Ben have to say that kind of caught your attention, Dave?
I mean, this was just Ben being Ben, right? I mean, pretty much, still has obviously some regret about the Super Bowl against the Packers, but even a little bit of shade in there to some degree, with the innuendo, would have been fun to see what would have happened. And then basically inferring that it had Rashard Mendenhall not fumbled. Yeah, he says he feels. He also had a little bit of shots fired about how the game has changed, and players on social media, and how it's more about me, and not so much about team, and how he doesn't want to get on his soapbox. But here I am on my soapbox. It's classic Ben, and this article will do very, very well on overall for the Post-Gazette. It'll get talked about on talk radio through the next couple of days as well too. But I mean, this, just like Ben being Ben on the field, this is Ben being Ben off the field.
Yeah, really well said overall. Nothing really surprising from what Ben said in terms of his thoughts or, some of the answers that he gave there. I'm sure Rashard Mendenhall will go on another Twitter rant here about Ben's comments here in a couple moments. But yeah, he did talk about how the game has changed and it's a little bit more selfish and me first and not team first. And that's probably fair, but that just makes Ben sound really old, which I guess he kind of is right now.
Yeah, him also saying, I feel like I can still play. I mean, okay.
Does that kind of get like he was pushed out? I mean, he says he goes out on his own terms, but yet he's saying he can still play.
Yeah. Once again, reading printed quotes as opposed to how the actual conversation went. I don't know. I don't know that we'd have too different of takeaways when it comes to that. But he does get the impression here that he was kind of pushed out, that he would have, maybe done something with his contract to obviously avoid it back in February. And the way, look, that's another thing that people forget in all this too, is that the Steelers were really, really up against it by not having that extra, that extra kind of assumed that they thought they were going to get, an extra $25 million or so in cap space with because of the COVID fallout and all like that. I mean, they really had to be creative in ways that they did things. And, Roethlisberger taking, what was it, a $5 million pay cut in sense there. Does he feel like, look, if they didn't want him back, they wouldn't have had him back.
Right. Well, I think it was Art Rooney that really wanted Ben to come back. And, if Rooney didn't want Ben back, he wouldn't have come back. And if Rooney wanted Ben back, he would have come back and came back. And that's obviously what happened.
Okay. Well, then that's all that matters, but I mean, obviously Roethlisberger feels like they just put up with him, and worked around him. Now, look, obviously with, the offense, and that's what we're going to get to find out this year. How, what does Matt Canada's offense really look like? That's something that, because of Ben's skill set and the way he played and, the way he probably wanted to do things, we obviously didn't get to see that. Now, obviously hindsight being 2020 with the draft being behind us and all like that. I mean, there was no way Ben was going to play one more, this season.
Right. I think from the Steelers side, at least, regardless of what Ben thought or wanted to do, this was going to be it for the Steelers having Ben, just based on the way the contract ended and, the cap going up, and just seemed like a good finish point, which I think is the right thing. Ben coming back, it wasn't going to work. This team wasn't going to go on some sort of big run with Ben anymore, as sad as it is to say. And so it was the right time to move on.
Right. He says, my arm feels like I could still go out and play. I'm pretty confident I can still play, but it's every day. It's mental, not having to prepare for camp. So, I mean, I get it. And look, yeah, I know it's hard. It's got to be incredibly hard for players to walk away from something that they've, done, especially as long as he did it for. And he, obviously did it for a high level as well, too. So it's just going to be interesting now to sit back and watch how this is kind of dissected. And we're obviously doing it right now. And, how people kind of paint, none of this is going to take away from his legacy.
No, I mean, ultimately, end of the day, the dude put 2 Super Bowl trophies into that case, and it's the first ballot Hall of Famer. And to me, the greatest, quarterback in Steelers history. I'm sure some people will still say Terry Bradshaw because of 4 Super Bowls. I'm still going to go with Ben number 1. And so this will all be forgotten. Listen, this will be forgotten by Wednesday when camp starts, and we're talking about what's going on for the 2022 Steelers. But it's a nice springboard, I guess, into training camp. Right. And
that's why I said it'll do very good. We'll see if the Deshaun, like you said, if the Deshaun Watson news drops later today. But at least for Pittsburgh sports radio and podcast and printed stuff, I mean, this is going to rule the day as far as Steelers stuff goes.
And for Watson, honestly, I know some people are expecting it to happen today, and I understand the whole Friday news stump angle, but the NFL really has no control over this. This isn't like the old ways of Goodell, having the whole process in his hands of making the decision and timing the decision. It's all up to the district judge, or the former district judge, Sue Robinson. And whenever she makes her decision, that could be on a Monday at 3:00. That could be on a Wednesday at 9 a.m. It could be at any point. And so the NFL is not really in control about when this story and this decision comes down and gets released to the public. So I have no idea when that news is going to break.
Yeah, look, I'll just be glad to get it over with, because the speculation on top of the speculation, it's almost a repeat of leading up to Watson being traded.
Yeah, seriously.
Where he was going. I mean, we've got one reporter out there, I think, radio, who covers the Browns, that says expects suspension to be anywhere from 2 to 8 games. Well,
yeah, that's a range.
That's quite a range there, right? is anybody going to go back and hold this guy accountable if it's like a full season or if it's 12 or 13 games? Probably not. But, they're obviously looking for things to write about this time of off season, but there has been so much sources said or appears to be non-qualifying type things that happen in today's media that, I mean, we've been talking about this now for weeks, In fact, I had personally thought that every Friday for the last four weeks that it's just a Friday, I mean, that's how long I feel like I've been strung along, but it doesn't. I mean, they report next week, right? I mean, it feels like today has to be the day. Of course, I was thinking that last couple Fridays too.
Right. I know it feels like that, but again, this does not have to happen on a Friday. The NFL is not in control of this decision. It's whenever Sue Robinson issues her final brief and her ruling and thoughts, and that could come at literally any time. She is not going to play the Friday news dump game the NFL, and other leagues and businesses like to play. So I have no idea when this could happen. It could even bleed into training camp. It's whenever that decision is ready. I don't really think Sue Robinson cares a whole lot about when the start of training camp is. She's just going to care about whenever her ruling is official and ready to be known.
All right. I hope we don't get to Monday and me saying I'm surprised that the ruling didn't come down, over the weekend and all like that.
Right. I mean, it could, but I just don't. Yeah. I don't think anyone knows anything about anything right
now. The Browns did sign Josh Rosen to a 1-year deal, and read into that what you will, right, of what they think might happen with Deshaun Watson. That now gives them, 3 other quarterbacks under contract, and Jacoby Brissett, obviously Joshua Dobbs, and now Rosen there. So it does kind of feel like they're preparing for something. Maybe they know, maybe they don't know. Maybe they were just the intention was to bring 4 quarterbacks to camp in some way, shape, or form, even though I think it's doubtful that Watson, if he is even there, will be there long, kind of thing there. So, look, make no mistake about it, that the Browns season, at least in my eyes, depends entirely on how many games Deshaun Watson's going to miss.
How many games is essentially too many for the Browns to really have a chance to compete? Is it 8 games? Is it 6 games? Do you have an idea of where that line lands?
I would think at least 8,
Okay. I think it's fair.
I mean, you can't get off. I don't feel like you can get off to a 3-5 or 2-6 kind of start. And, for them to win 3 games with Jacoby Brissett, 3 of their first 8 games with Jacoby Brissett, I feel would be quite an accomplishment on their part.
Yeah, I think if it's more than 6, that's going to put the Browns in a really tough spot. If it was hypothetically 6, they still have a good roster, sans Watson. If they could go even 2-4 and then Watson comes back, you're still not out of it. You're not sitting in a good spot, of course, but you're still not out of the whole race. I don't know exactly how their schedule looks in terms of when they play their AFC North games. Obviously, they play week 3 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a Thursday night game. But I would say if it's 6 and under, that's quote unquote, for lack of a better word, good news for the Browns.
Look, here's the thing too. I mean, this guy didn't play last season, right?
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of rust, a lot of unknown there.
I mean, obviously when you go back to the last time he actually did play, I mean, if that same guy shows up, but that's something else that's not being talked about enough. So, I mean, we could seriously be looking at a quarterback that has not played a football game in a year and a half. And, he's in a season and a half. And, he's on a new team. And assuming he has to miss all of training camp, that kind of stuff, right? That's a big deal.
Sure. That's a fair point. It probably does not get discussed enough about, this is the first time this guy's going to be playing for 2 years essentially, and how does that look? And
not having the timing and all the stuff that goes into that, that kind of stuff throughout the off season. To expect a guy to come in, oh hey guys, how you been? All right, let's go out and win one. Essentially coming back, let's say game 9, week 9, 10, whatever, in there. That's a tough chore.
Absolutely. So it's a fair point, and we'll just have to wait and see. Take it one day at a time, see what today brings, if anything at all. And if something happens, of course, we'll write about it and talk about it on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Some other news here. Really, people love their Heinz ketchup related stories. And so while the ketchup bottles will not remain above the scoreboard at now Acrisure Stadium, Heinz will still have a partnership with the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, announcing a 5-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a slightly different looking partnership. It will still be called the Heinz Red Zone. There will be digital ketchup bottles that show up on the scoreboard instead of the actual big ketchup bottles whenever the Steelers offense reaches the opponent's 20-yard line. The ketchup bottles apparently will still be on display somewhere inside the stadium, or at least one of the ketchup bottles will. So people really enjoyed that story and are happy to see that partnership continue in a slightly different looking fashion.
Yeah, and I at least that's a positive, I think, to come out of this. It'll still be kind of the Heinz Red Zone, however they go about doing it. I mean, wasn't most of it done digitally anyway? It just had the effect of the two bottles tilted down, in that. I mean, in today's digital age, you could probably recreate something on that scoreboard that will be appealing without the two actual giant, ketchup bottles being up there. And it does sound like at least one of them will be somewhere in the stadium for a photo op. And, the Steelers, as part of this 5-year deal, will get some more revenue out of this, which is big as well, too. So other than, the actual name change, which some people will never embrace, this is a kind of the next best thing, I would say.
Yeah, I suppose if there was going to be a compromise, I wish the bottles would have stayed up and they could have kept it the Heinz Red Zone. That would have been ideal. I don't know if Acrisure would have loved that kind of branding, though, be so obvious in the stadium. I don't know all the terms and conditions there, but it's something. So I'm not sure where they're going to put the bottles, though. I mean, there's not a great place to put them there. There's some room, I suppose, but it's not like you have a spot made for a, 20-foot tall ketchup bottle.
Right. What do you think about the stadium and the shape it's in as a whole? I mean, obviously you don't travel around stadium to stadium and comparison, but how do you feel? I guess Heinz Field, Acrisure Stadium is holding up. See, I'm going to do that a ton. Even it's just it's in me. But how do you feel the current venue? How's that? How do you feel the current venue is holding up?
I mean, I haven't been there a ton over the years. Of course, I was there for training camp all of last year. And to me, the stadium seemed fine. It was in good shape. It's not pristine condition. PNC Park to me is in a lot better shape than Heinz Field is in. Who was it? Was it Ron Cook or somebody else that said the stadium's a disaster? And
yeah, I think it was.
Can't wait for it to be torn down and something new to be built. And so, I mean, I think in this day and age, you're seeing all these state-of-the-art, facilities, SoFi Stadium and other kind of places, what the Cowboys have and Jerry World down there. And it kind of maybe dwarfs Pittsburgh in that sense, but I don't know if Pittsburgh's looking for this super gaudy, crazy $1 billion stadium to build in the middle of downtown.
No, I don't think so either. And I think here we are, 2001. I mean, it's 21 years old right now, and I believe the lease runs through
2030.
2030. Nothing's going to happen before that. So, I mean, if you want to start speculating about what happens, 2031, maybe, but it certainly does feel like, let's see, 2001. I mean, you're talking about 30 years in there. I wouldn't be surprised if, you're looking more like 2035. Man, that sounds weird to say. 2035 as to maybe the potential time that the Steelers actually get a new stadium.
I don't know this stuff too well, but hypothetically, if they wanted to build a new stadium, wouldn't that conversation have to start potentially around, say, 2027, a couple of years before the lease is up, so it can be built before the lease actually expires?
Oh, yeah. Look, because how you going to fund it?
Right.
Everything. It's not just like, okay, you know what? Get busy building us a new stadium here in the next 6 months.
Right. Yeah. You can't sit there in 2030 and say, let's find a new place to play. So isn't it possible if they want a new stadium, that conversation actually might be not that far away within 5 years about they got to decide, do we want a new stadium or do we want to re-up the lease? That's going to be a conversation the Rooney's have to have.
Well, definitely if they're thinking that they're going to have a stadium in 2031.
Right, that's what I'm saying, because the lease is up. Now, they could, of course, extend the lease and say we're going to extend the lease 5 years and also start planning on building a new stadium. But I think it's not impossible. I don't know what's going to happen. I know Art Rooney talked about wanting to stay for a long time, but who the heck knows? He may not even be running the team in 5 years. There may be another Rooney. So I think it's possible that 5 years from now, that conversation is at least floated about, will this team build a new stadium?
Do you think that, from what you know about the stadium, do you think it can hold up another 15 years or be enough?
I wish I had that kind of great architecture insight.
That's above your pay grade?
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, that would be, if it's till, you said 15 years?
Well, look, I mean, you got another, 8? I mean, it's 21 years old now, right?
Right. That's what I was saying. So you're saying, could Heinz Field, or Acrisure Stadium, there I go, Acrisure Stadium exist for 36 years? I mean, Three Rivers was only around for just over 30, right?
Okay.
I think it probably
that's what
could.
I'm asking. I mean,
yeah, I think it could, because it was, more newly built and probably just a bit better constructed overall. But yeah, I mean, at some point they're not going to play in that venue forever. So maybe you're right. They re-up the lease for 5 years in 2030, and then they start building a new stadium in 2032, 2033.
I mean, I'm not saying that's the way it's going to go, but I mean, it feels like that's something that they would surely consider. I don't know. I haven't stepped in a foot inside the stadium to even know to compare it to other places and all. Heck, that damn Superdome's been around forever in New Orleans, right? I mean, and that's last of them. Now it's not great inside, and I'm trying to think where else that I've been. I mean, they tore down the old Georgia Dome, right? Or what was the one? Wasn't it the Georgia Dome? Aren't they in a new stadium now, the Falcons? When did they? Yeah,
I don't know the whole timeline, but I believe you're right.
Right. But I mean, I don't know. It's just something to think about, though. But you're right. I mean, if they were to have a new one in place by the time this current lease ended, I mean, that's 8 years away. I mean, you're thinking 3 or 4 years is when kind of the talk needs to begin happening to how they would fund it, where it's going to go, to get the building underway and all like that.
Right. At the very least, I think that decision will have to be made within the next 5 years. And that's going to come up faster than people think about what is the future of that venue and what is going to be the next course of action.
Indeed.
So we'll see. That's something to think about down the road. Let's see. What else do we have here, Dave? Kim Hayward on his podcast, Not Just Football with Kim Hayward, though mostly football with Kim Hayward is what I'm going to call it, talking about Larry Ogunjobi and Mason Rudolph. And that was always kind of the elephant in the room whenever the team signed Ogunjobi to a 1-year, $8 million deal. The history there with Mason Rudolph, the 2019 Myles Garrett incident. It was not obviously Ogunjobi that hit Rudolph over the head with his own helmet. That was Garrett's doing, but Ogunjobi's the man who shoved Rudolph down after that. And there were some words exchanged after that moment. But Hayward saying it's all water under the bridge. He believes that Ogunjobi and Rudolph have talked. Ogunjobi asked about, is this going to be weird or awkward? And Hayward said, we're just all focused on winning. And so apparently any sort of beef or any sort of weird tension there is gone, according to Kim Hayward.
Yeah, there might still be some awkwardness to some degree, I would imagine. But, I mean, heck, is Rudolph even going to be on this team come week 1 for it to even matter? It will be interesting, once Rudolph shows up in training camp and Larry, that's going to be part of it. This is not the last time we're going to be talking about this. And especially probably not the last time we're going to be talking about this in the next 2 weeks, because the first time that the microphone gets put in Larry Ogunjobi's face, or the first time that Mason meets the media at Latrobe, that's going to be a line of the questioning there. I expect both of them to say, look, we talked. It's not a thing. We're moving past it. It's all about winning now and what we can do for the 2022 Steelers, yada, yada. I'm just here in the show to help win some game. The whole bull. I can actually use Bull Durham quotes now, and they mean a little something to you now. In that aspect. But it will be written and talked about here in the next several weeks because we haven't even heard from Larry Ogunjobi officially on the Steelers side of things. He had the interview on Sirius XM radio, and Mason really hasn't said much of anything, right? So that's coming. But to hear Cam Hayward talk about it, it's water under the bridge right now.
Yeah, I mean, those guys will be asked about it, and Rudolph has not even spoken publicly since the Ogunjobi signing because that all happened post-spring workouts and OTA, so there really hasn't been a chance to speak with him. But they both give very cliche and canned answers, which is fine. They're not going to say anything, and there's probably not a lot to say. It happened. It's over. They're on the same team now, and you're just going to be good teammates. So I don't see that being an issue and being really all that interesting of a story, although I know they will be asked about it, and we will write about it.
Right.
Let's see, Dave. Jonathan Heitrader and I have been doing this offseason series on different debate topics, ranging from should the Steelers pay Deonte Johnson to will TJ Watt break the single-season sack record this year. Today's topic on Steelers Depot was, how do you define a successful Steelers 2022 season? And Jonathan and I had slightly different points of defining that. And this is kind of like, what is the bare minimum goal of what you would call a successful season? For me, I said just make the playoffs. For Jonathan, it's basically win a playoff game, win in wild card weekend. How would you define, in your mind, what is kind of the minimum definition of a successful Steelers season?
So basically, you guys are in agreement that at least the playoffs need to be made. But he takes it a step further than that in defining it successful as saying they need at least a playoff win, right?
Yes, correct.
I think if Mike Tomlin gets his team in the playoffs, regardless of what happens, if he gets them to the playoffs, and I think you have to talk about Mike Tomlin as being potential coach of the year, to be honest with you. That's where I'm at with this team right now. Now, it's July 22nd. We've all seen how quickly things can change from this point of the offseason, 4 weeks into the season. Look, we'll know here very soon what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson. We'll really have a better idea on the prospects of the Browns season very, very soon. Who are the Ravens? I was one of the few that were probably more down on the Ravens than most, I think, last season there. Now they had obviously injuries and yada, yada, and everything that went along with that. I do think they're going to be at least a 500 or better team, probably a couple of games better than 500 in 2022. The Bengals, who are, obviously it was a good season for the Bengals last season. They have supposedly improve their offensive line. And if indeed that comes to fruition on the field, then they're going to win 10 or more games as well, too. So the Steelers are in a position where they can't afford to have really any of either one of the lily pads moved here, because if they do, the frog's going to end up in the water.
Hey, look at you with good references. Is that a Frogger reference or just a general
just a general reference there, because there is less margin of error for this 2022 Steelers team, I think, than there is for the margin of error with the Ravens and the Bengals there. And Cam Hayward said this in his first episode of his podcast, and look, it's no secret that everything revolves around this Steelers defense doing enough, not only sacking the quarterback, but getting takeaways this year, putting the offense in good position, and the offense just basically not stepping on their you-know-what. They're going to have to be able to run the football, but for this, to me, where this team is right now, a lot of things have got to remain dead solid perfect, if you will. And it starts with the defense. being healthy and doing their part, and the offense doing just enough with running the football and not turning the football over. If this team loses any other key pieces, and yeah, you can say, but Dave, yeah, that reigns supreme across the NFL. It really is the case with this team. TJ Watt's got to stay healthy, plain and simple. Najee Harris has got to stay healthy, plain and simple. You lose either one of those two guys, you are in trouble, I think, personally. And then, the quarterback play just can't be, you just can't look away from it. I mean, if Trubisky gets through the first 6 games and you're not blaming losses on him, then something else is going wrong, right? Right. And it's probably on the defensive side of the football. But however, if you get to week 6, week 7, or to the bye, and you're saying, man, this team, the defense has done their part, and this team's, 3-6 or 4-5, then what are you going to do there? So I think so many things got to go. So back to the original point here in the argument.
Right.
I think making the playoffs in general, regardless what happens past that, is what defines a successful Steelers 2022 season.
And that was my point. And I understand. Listen, I'm very frustrated by this team not having the playoff victories. I know they've gotten to the postseason several times over the last 5 years, but have not won a playoff game over that span. And I'm the one that loathes and kind of hates the Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season stat as much as anybody, because you
don't have the bumper sticker on your Porsche, no?
Right, that says never had a losing season. They hang banners and Lombardi trophies and cases in Pittsburgh. Not we went 9-8, and so I get that, but I think just given all that's against the Steelers this year, all the uncertainty on the offense at quarterback, a really tough division. I'm really high on Baltimore this year, Dave. I'll say that off the top. I mean, this is a team that went 8-9 last year without Lamar Jackson over the last month. They lost every single game he did not play. They lost all their running backs. They lost all their cornerbacks, and they still were the division leaders through November. And so with everyone healthy, or even just 50% better health, this team probably would have won the AFC North overall. Even they just had Lamar Jackson. If he would have stayed healthy, didn't have that ankle sprain, they probably win the AFC North or are super, super competitive down the stretch. And so if Pittsburgh is able to overcome all of those problems and get into the postseason, even without a victory, to me, that is a really good sign, not just because it'll still be disappointing in the year, of course, but it's a really good sign towards the future of, this team was able, because if they get in the playoffs, a lot of things really had to go right, as you talked about. And so that's a really good sign for having a bright future, even if it's going to require just one more year of disappointment with a non-winning season in terms of the postseason in 2022.
Look, everybody will frame this as Dave and Alex thinks the Steelers suck and all like that. Well, look, here my preface is there's less margin. This team, if a lot of things go right, can get to the playoffs. But I think the margin for error with them is a lot smaller than any other team, at least in the AFC North. And look, the Browns' margin of error, to me, all revolves around how many games is Deshaun Watson going to miss. Right. If they have him for half a season or more, they're probably going to be all right overall. I just think that looking at the Steelers from where they sit right now, they're more, a lot of things have got to go right for them to make the playoffs. And if they do, I think it is a successful season, and who knows, maybe you get Kenny Pickett some playing time in there. But even if you don't, there was an article on Bleacher Report saying that how the Steelers messed up their offseason because they're technically not putting Kenny Pickett in the best position to win in 2023. You got to get through 2022 first. And, part of the argument was not surrounding not doing enough on the offensive line. Look, you might differ with the players that you think that they should have added and all, but this team addressed their offensive line this offseason. All right. It might not be the way that you listening to this podcast think that they should have done it. Maybe you think they should have let Chukwuekwuemeka for a walk, and they should have brought in somebody. It wasn't going to be Teron Armstead. It's like, how old is he? 33, 4, 5, something like that. It just wasn't going to be that at that kind of money with him. This team, at least traditionally, and people say, well, that's just it. They hold on to too many traditions. They like to re-sign their own if they can. And $10 million for a starting right tackle in the NFL, that might seem like a lot, but in today's NFL, that's not really a lot, right? Especially at his age. Right. Talking about Okorafor. This team has spent previous draft picks, Kendrick Green, Kevin Dotson, Dan Moore Jr. They have spent draft picks, 4th round or higher, on offensive linemen. Are you ready to just throw out the bathwater with them inside of it, all of them? Is that them not doing enough because they didn't move on from those 3 players already? I mean, say what you will about Mason Cole, but that should be some sort of upgrade over what they had at center last year. And James Daniels should be an upgrade over Trey Turner. So it just goes back to, you've got to play for the net. And hopefully this is a problem that we're talking about as well too here. What if Mitch Trubisky finally becomes kind of that, at least like a 2nd round quarterback? Obviously you're going to need him to play more like a 1st round quarterback, but what's the talk going to be like if Mitch Trubisky has this team at, I don't know, 5-3 around bye time?
Sure. It would be a very good problem to have, and I would love to entertain that conversation.
It's a good problem to have.
Come Halloween, as you said. Yeah, I think with the offensive line, I think there is at least the argument to be made that while Pittsburgh has changed their offensive line, have they invested enough in it? Does a 3-year deal to a middling player like Mason Cole is that going to move the needle significantly? Is drafting, borderline day 2, day 3 picks in Kendrick Green, Dan Moore Jr., is that enough of an investment? I think is what some people will say. Now, we'll see, and I'm optimistic about this line getting better. I was really excited about the James Daniels signing, but I can see the argument others are making. And bottom line is, this offensive line better take a step forward, because you cannot have 3 straight years of really poor to below the line play along your offensive line in Pittsburgh. And that's what will happen if this line does not get it together this season.
Right. And that's why I'm on your side of the argument here. I think if they make the playoffs, at least from where I sit right now, in 2022, it's a successful season. It's not a successful season the way the standard is the standard, and sure, and Lombardi's and all like that. But I think if you do, I think it really will give you sense of this, maybe these next 3 years are a Super Bowl window.
Right. That's my point, is that it would be a look towards the future of this team's going to have a really bright future if they're still able to make the playoffs, because that probably means your offensive line did a really good job. Your run game overall was a lot more effective, efficient. Your secondary made more splash plays. Your rookie receiver stepped up. Quarterback obviously played fairly well, at least overall. Maybe Pickett is part of that conversation, that story. And so it's less about being like, wow, this team lost in the wild card game again. That's all right. That's a great season. But more about the future for the Steelers would be bright if they get back to the playoffs this year, despite, I think, everything working against them.
Look, if you have done it right in the draft and free agency and your decisions, then where this organization is right now, it should be expected that the 3 from 2023 to 2026 should be a legitimate Super Bowl window for this team, right? Because you don't have the quarterback on the big contract. Look, you don't have to worry about giving Kenny Pickett a bag until 2025 at the earliest.
Right. The only thing that could change that cloudiness of that bright future is, let's say the Steelers have a really good season. Let's say they make the playoffs at 10-7 with Mitch Trubisky. It's still going to be a question of, well, what is Kenny Pickett capable of? And is he ever going to play well? And if Trubisky's the guy this year, then that would still be the biggest question that would not be answered going into the future.
Okay. I have a feeling we're going to see Kenny Pickett at some point in 2022, and whether or not that ends up being, positive results or not, at least he's going to, I think he's going to get some playing time at some point.
Well, in theory, though, this team does make the playoffs, then when is Pickett going to play, barring injury? Because if this team's a playoff-bound team.
I mean, who would have thought when Roethlisberger hit the field in 2004 in the third game?
Well, like I said, barring injury. I mean, yeah. Because if this team is a playoff contending team, Trubisky's going to start.
If Kenny Pickett has to play earlier than later, odds are probably good that this team's not going to be in the playoffs.
Right. So hypothetically, if this team does make the playoffs, unless there is an injury, then Pickett is probably unlikely to see the field or that much.
Right. And then how much is the experience of holding the clipboard and learning and translate into the first time he does hit the field.
Right.
Say it's in 2023.
Sure. All that aside, though, that's my definition. And listen, obviously, if you give me the choice between win a playoff game or don't win a playoff game, I will take win the playoff game. That's always more successful. But I think in terms of like what is your minimum bar of success, to me, getting into the playoffs again would be that mark.
The Monday morning quarterback issue would be that Trubisky plays most near all of 2022. And then, the Steelers are right in kind of still in the hunt, if you will, into the final few seasons. And then they wind up not making the playoffs. Kenny Pickett doesn't play at all. And then you're saying, well, they should have just let Kenny Pickett play, to get him the experience. They didn't make the playoffs anyway. That's where the real Monday morning quarterbacking will come in after the season. Is that if Mike Tomlin gets another mark on for the bumper sticker there at 9-8,
mm-hmm.
and then they missed the playoffs, but Kenny Pickett played 50 offensive snaps.
Right. That's almost the worst case scenario because Pickett didn't play.
Could that happen?
Is that the most realistic scenario and the worst case scenario? Yeah, it might be. Because you're picking then like 18th overall. You don't have a super high pick. You don't know what you have in Pickett. Trubisky, you're not really sure what to do. You're in this weird in between with him. So Andy didn't make the playoffs. So that would be kind of the worst of both worlds.
And then what if you get yourself in a situation where they do make the playoffs and let's say Trubisky has a pretty decent hand in that happening, then what's the talk going to be? Oh man, maybe they should keep Trubisky another season, let him at least start the 2023 season. And then here we are again.
Sure. But at least you had a better season and made the playoffs. I think it's worse if you're 8-9 and you just lose at the very end and Trubisky was okay, but it's not like you really want to stick with him going forward. At least if you're asking about, Trubisky played pretty well, got you the playoffs, that's a better problem to have.
Look, I'll gladly stick my foot in my mouth here, but I will be golf clapped city and then more if Mike Tomlin gets, however fashion it happens, if Mike Tomlin gets his team to the playoffs, I think I will consider it, I'm with you, a successful season.
All right. Let me just get your quick take on some of the other debates that Jonathan and I have had. This might be the last one we have for a little bit. So I just kind of want to go rapid fire and just get your opinion, maybe play tiebreaker on some of these. Should the Steelers pay Deonte Johnson? That was our first debate. And this was a while ago, even before the Scary Terry deal. But should the Steelers pay Deonte Johnson?
Are we assuming at least Terry money or less?
At this point, I suppose so, but I kind of left it open-ended to make it however you want to make it.
It's not going to be a popular decision, but I would say yes. I think they should.
They should. Okay. Will TJ Watt set the sack record in 2022?
I think that's a tough chore just overall in today's NFL. I think that's just so tough. Can he come close to it? I think so. Yeah, obviously needs to stay healthy. I think it's tough to do that back-to-back season. So I'm going to say no, he will not set the sack record.
Should Derek Watt and Connor Hayward both make the Steelers roster?
I would say yes on that. I really would, because I think you can function. Look, as long as both of them do what they're supposed to do on special teams, which I think should be able to happen. I think Hayward can be that quasi third tight end, backup fullback, special teams guy, occasional slot guy, maybe inside the red zone to give teams something to think about. So yeah, is it should or could?
Should. We know they could, but should they? Or is it too redundant to have both those guys on the roster?
I think they'd be okay with that happening. I'll go with should.
Okay. Should the Steelers explore trading Mason Rudolph in the sense of they should actively look to move him?
I think if you can get a 5th round pick, definitely.
Okay. And last one, will Devin Bush return in 2023? Will he be a Steeler next year?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. I said no as well. So
if he does, do you really want him? I mean, because if
well, it depends. If he has a great year, then of course
right. Well, the only way I don't think so.
Me neither. But those were the debates that Jonathan and I had. Maybe we'll do some more in season.
Was I more on your side? I don't remember. Was I more?
I think you were pretty split, almost 50-50 with Jonathan and I. I had yes, the Steelers should pay Deonte Johnson. I had yes, TJ Watt will break the sack record this year. I had no, Watt and Hayward should not make the roster. That's a maybe tougher argument I tried to make there. And I had no, they should not explore trading Rudolph, and no, Bush will not return next year.
Okay.
All right, Dave, what else do we have here? I think our 90 and 30 series. We're getting close to the finish line. We'll finish it up next week, but let me just pull up the rest of the names here that we'll go over today. Actually, real quick, by the way.
Will Pat Freiermuth have 9 or more touchdowns in 2022?
No, I'll say no. I'll take the under.
Okay. I think he could. Look, he got 7 last year, right? I mean, right. And if this team's going to score some points inside the red zone, it's going to probably be either him, Deonte, or Najee Harris. Obviously, that 9, the over under mark probably should be about 8.5 because of the amount of playing time that he had last year. I'd like to see him do it though, because I mean, 16 would be, after the first 2 seasons, I think that'd be quite an accomplishment on the Steelers' all-time tight end, touchdown list.
Sure. I just see touchdowns being a little fickle, a little inconsistent, and I think this team's going to really want to and be able to run the ball with. I think Najee Harris is going to be your red zone goal line machine this year, as it should be.
Okay.
Real quick, did the NFL do a top 100 this year? What NFL network's top 100?
That's coming.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Is that always this late? It feels like this is late this year.
I don't remember.
All right, never mind. As long as it's coming, I hadn't heard a single thing about it, and so I was kind of waiting to hear more about the NFL's top 100.
They'll start trickling that out anytime now.
I'm sure they will. All right, 90 and 30 time. We'll start with Lyndon Stevens, reserve futures contract cornerback. Obviously, no one expecting him to make the roster, but always good to learn about these guys. And there's always a chance for a practice squad spot as well. So, I don't want to call anyone a camp body. We'll treat everyone fairly and with respect and talk about them. So we'll see how Lyndon Stevens looks in camp.
Yeah, once again, you could somewhat fathom a path on the back end of the cornerback depth chart there, but he would have to be lights out, obviously, in special teams. And look, he's a former undrafted free agent from 2018. Normally, those guys, especially secondary guys that haven't kind of stuck at this point, it's a hard notion for them at this point. So it's an obvious with him that I think it would be a huge accomplishment for him if he makes all the cuts, survives all the cuts except the last one, and then ends up on the practice squad. I think that's kind of the best case scenario when it comes to him.
Right. I think that's a fair assessment overall. You never know. I mean, he has a good showing. He can stick around on the practice squad, and, injuries happen and things like that, but just too many people in front of him. Does have some, he was with the team last year, right? And so there's some, this isn't brand new to him, which will help out a little bit at least.
Right. But once again, new season. I mean, they did bring him back, obviously, on a reserve future contract. And I think he's played, in 16 total NFL games with the Dolphins. So he's got some NFL experience. I mean, he has, 6 career tackles, 65 total defensive snaps, 189 special team snaps. So he's used to that phase of the game. But his last NFL snaps came, I think, back in 2020. With the Seahawks. So, yeah, I mean, once again, I think it'd be a huge accomplishment if he makes all the cuts and then winds up back on the practice squad for him to start week 1.
Fair point. Jay Sternberger next on our list. Pedigree guy, former 3rd-round pick out of Texas Tech, was with Green Bay, did not work out there, caught on the Steelers practice squad midway, late-ish last season. There is that number 3 tight end spot that is I would call it open. I think people are saying Connor Hayward, considering he's being viewed by the Steelers, rightly or wrongly, as a tight end. Kevin Rader there as well, of course. But in theory, there could be a chance for Sternberger. But is he just one of those, flash in the pans? Because he was a 1-year guy at Texas Tech. I think he transferred and it just didn't work out there. And so this is probably his last chance. But in theory, with a good showing, there could be some buzz there.
Yeah, he's a draft pedigree reclamation project is what I like to call him. And you're right. He was really just a 1-year player in college. Nearly all of his college stats came at Texas A&M after he moved on from Kansas there. Here's the problem with him. Not much of a blocker at all and not much of a special teams asset. So if you're neither one of those two things and you're trying to be the number 3 tight end on a 53-man roster, that's probably not going to bode too well for him overall. So if there's one thing to look at him in training camp or throughout the preseason process, how's his blocking and how many snaps is Danny Smith rolling him out there in special teams? I can look at his special team snaps alone from week 1 and beyond, assuming he makes some of these cuts, and tell you whether or not he's going to make it. Because if he's out there for like 3 snaps, that tells you all he's going to, all you need to know there. And people say, yeah, but he can catch the football. It's not going to matter when it comes down to that 3rd tight end spot. He better be able to block. He better be able to play special teams. And right now, it's not looking like either one of those 2 things are his strengths.
Right. I don't get the sense he'll be doing a whole lot on special teams or doing all that well. It's a really question of what do you do here exactly? The Bob situation. And I don't know what Sternberger is going to do well. And ahead of him, Rader has proven to be a good special teams player. I think Connor Hayward will prove to be a good special teams player. And so that path for Sternberger, barring injury, is going to get pretty tight.
Maybe he can land on the practice squad. I really kind of, along with Lyndon Stevens, I think that's kind of the best case scenario for Sternberger.
Agreed. Now, one of my camp sleepers, and I understand his path may be crowded, but just in terms of a guy that may play well this summer, that may get a lot of buzz and discussion and could be that quote unquote tough cut. Donovan Steiner, 2nd-year undrafted free agent out of Florida, the only undrafted free agent from the 2021 class still with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I like his size. I like his physicality. Thought he had a decent summer last year. Now a 2nd-year guy. Kind of a little Miles Killebrew-like, where his coverage ability, his overall athleticism, not off the charts, but a good box type. I think he will do well on special teams. A year under his belt. Watch out for Donovan Steiner.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to be interested to see what he knows of that defense now and the versatility that he can have. And if something were to happen to, let's say, Killebrew's going to make this roster, right? I mean, barring injury, I mean, this guy is just going to be too valuable to Danny Smith for him to not. And, he can, although he can play, the safety position, that's obviously not something that you want to see. But if something were to happen to Killebrew, God forbid, this might be the guy with the that benefits the most from it. It's not going to be Carl Joseph, because Carl Joseph really doesn't give you what Killebrew gives you on special teams. Can Steiner, be that kind of Miles Killebrew player?
Right. That might be his best path and best goal and opportunity. And again, I understand that safety room's looking pretty crowded. You mentioned Joseph, there's Killebrew, Norwood, Casey. Some of those guys are a bit slot corner safety. They're not always doing the same thing as the other guy, but it is a pretty crowded room overall. But I think Steiner will have a good summer and just, again, make himself a tough cut.
Right. Of all the guys we've talked about, I mean, this guy really, really seems like he's got the best shot, at least remain, that you could put money down on saying he will be part of the 2022 Steelers in some capacity in week one, more than likely on the practice squad, you would think. But I really like his chances of at least starting week one, at the very least on the practice squad.
Me too. Moving on now to a starter, Cameron Sutton, the Steelers starting right cornerback last year. A little unclear what that role will look like this year. One of the first things I'm going to look at day one of training camp is who are the base corners and how does the nickel package look? I mean, will Sutton be a base corner? Will he play in the slot in nickel and sub package? I'm not really sure right now how that's going to go with Sutton, with Witherspoon, with Wallace, but I'm excited to finally find out.
I mean, all we know is he's going to be on the roster. He's going to play a lot of snaps because obviously the Steelers use a lot of sub package, and he, regardless in base or in sub package, he's going to be on the field, you would think. So, yeah, the biggest question surrounding him as we sit here right now is just how is he used, and particularly in sub package type situations. Extremely smart. Look, this is a big year for him too, right? Because it does his contract void after this year.
It does, correct.
I mean, he's a field journey. You go back to the pre-draft process, talk about him and how smart a player he is. I mean, this is as close to a green dot wearing linebacker as you're going to have. And obviously he plays cornerback there. This guy that's going to be responsible for communication in that back end. But once again, it's going to come down to how is he used? And if he is used quite a bit more in the slot, how does he play?
Right. To me, I would play him in the slot. I think he's the most natural fit there. I think, the run defense, the blitzing might not be as Mike Hilton-esque, but I think, Wallace, Witherspoon on the outside, Sutton in the slot makes the most amount of sense. But we'll see. I think I read and heard some stuff that Wallace was getting some work in the slot during the spring. To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. He's more of an outside corner. So we'll see on that. I mean, Sutton will, of course, have a role. Just how that looks is a little unclear. Wallace is where he is right now and got the money that he got because of taking over for Trey, what's his last name? Tre'Davious White. Yeah, Tre'Davious White over there in Buffalo. And he played, Wallace played reasonably well once he took over that spot once Tre'Davious White went down. That's why he is where he is right now and for the money. So it doesn't make sense to, hey, that all looked good on tape last year playing on the outside. Let's move you inside. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, I mean, it is you don't fix the I'm the person that fixes things that are not broken. The Steelers should not be someone, a team that tries to fix things that are not broken. And to me, moving them inside would be attempting to fix something that's not broken with his game. Right. But I'll admit, this time last year, I was really convinced Sutton was going to be an inside nickel corner player, and he really wasn't until later in the year when Witherspoon kind of emerged. And even then, Sutton was still, I think, primarily an outside right cornerback. So been down this road before about the Sutton to the slot talk, and, it didn't work out. So I don't want to assume anything heading into the year. Boy, this time last year, we were saying, all right, get ready to watch Brooks play in the slot. Yeah, I got really desperate last year. And that was why I thought Sutton would play inside because it seemed like the most logical thing. But, that's not how things played out the first half of last year. Right. Mitch Trubisky up next. Talked about Trubisky a ton, of course. And so he'll enter camp as the favorite. He should take the first snap of team reps throughout the summer, or the very first training camp practice, I should say. And where that goes from there is really up to him. Divvying up quarterback reps and snaps and opportunity, I think, will be a really interesting question. Perhaps the Steelers' biggest obstacle this year. How do they manage reps for all these guys, 1 through 4? But for Trubisky, taking care of the football, running Canada's offense, showing leadership and poise, consistency, will be the keys to determining whether or not he's the week 1 starter. But it's his job to lose.
Yeah, and something to me, he Pickett or Rudolph, one of those two would have to just play out of their mind during camp and the preseason. Will either of them even get enough snaps to do that? And then Trubisky would just have to be, oh my God, what did we do here? Even a bad preseason showing for Trubisky might not be enough for him not to be the week one starter in my eyes at this point. We've talked about his deep ball in a couple of podcasts ago. He's going to have to be able to push the football down the field, more so than this team has done the last couple of seasons. He's going to have to protect the football on top of it. This has got to be his play. If he's going to keep the job, his play's got to be in concert with the defense on the other side of football. Obviously, Mitch Trubisky having multiple turnover games is not going to cut it. So I mean, it's his job until it isn't, and you just hope. If you're a Steelers fan, that he can guide this team. I think obviously the first, as we've talked several times, the first 6 games of this season before you go play the Eagles and the Dolphins on the road before the bye are really going to tell us a lot about this 2022 Steelers team. If they come out of those first 6 games and we're talking still, Trubisky, you can't put it all on Trubisky. For where the record is, then that probably bodes for him playing, maybe through the bye week there. However, if we're talking about, man, the defense did their part, Alex, but if Trubisky would have played better, then I think we're getting into the talk around the bye week of maybe seeing Kenny Pickett. So we know his strengths and his weaknesses at his point, at this point, or at least overall from what he was asked to do and not do in Chicago. Another thing, we talked about Deshaun Watson earlier in this show about him basically not playing football or didn't play any football last season there. I mean, Mitch played 33 offensive snaps in total, and people saying, oh, but his time in Buffalo did him so much good, Well, I don't know about you, but those 33 snaps that he played in Buffalo weren't that great overall for starters. And other than using the narrative that, but he's not playing for Nagy anymore, it's not like he's coming over to play in an offense run by Shanahan or
right. Now, Bill Walsh is not coming through that door. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we still got a lot to learn of whether or not Canada is greater than or equal to or less than Nagy, right? So I don't know. I don't understand why so many people seem to be hanging their hat on the fact that, Buffalo was such a good part of what happened to Mitch Trubisky last year. Maybe it was, but he's not at Buffalo anymore either, and he barely played while he was in Buffalo. And if you want to hang your hat on Trubisky's really 1.5 good preseason games last season, have at it. But this guy's got a lot to prove right now, and quarterbacks like him that league wide are thought highly of this past offseason don't sign the kind of contracts that Mitch Trubisky signed with the Steelers.
Right. I agree with what you're saying there, Dave. I think his time in Buffalo was probably a good thing, and it helped a little, but it's not going to matter a whole lot once this team kicks off week 1 against the Bengals. Trubisky will either sink or swim, and that'll be that. The last thing I'll say on Trubisky.
He looks to be in incredible shape too, man. There's some pictures coming out of him working down with those guys down at Boca Raton and all. And I mean, the guy looks like an incredibly great human. Looks like he's going to be at least, I think he's going to, with as young as this team on the offensive side of football and kind of the changeover that they've had on that side. And, some of those guys were there, but they only played one season with Roethlisberger. I don't fear what kind of leadership they're going to get on that side of football with James Daniels and Mitch Trubisky and Najee Harris. I don't think you have to worry about can Trubisky learn the playbook. Can he manage the huddle? Can he give him good leadership? I don't think that's going to be the issue there. I think it's all going to come down to how he plays, obviously.
Right. The last thing I would say on Trubisky is I agree he's the favorite to be the starter week 1. He will definitely take the first couple of reps in practice to start the summer, starting on Wednesday. But I think some people are just assuming he's got this job locked up. And I do. You think?
Yeah, I do.
The first moment that Trubisky falters in a practice or in a game and Pickett plays well, I promise you the conversation will come back to who should be the Steelers starter. And
sure.
So I don't think this conversation is settled quite yet.
All right, but that's what the conversation will be. But do you think that conversation will take place inside UPMC?
Well, it would depend on what happens after that. I mean, obviously, Pittsburgh will not be as reactionary and make those decisions in a vacuum. They don't have to make a decision until much later, more than a month from now. But I just know is that I think what I'm saying is the media is kind of taking this approach as this conversation is over. Trubisky's going to be the guy. What happens from there once the season starts, we'll see. But I know that door is going to open up the second there's a crack there where Pickett has a great practice or a great game and Trubisky falters just a little bit.
Look, I'm going to be shocked if, barring injury, Trubisky's not. And if he's not the week 1 quarterback, then I think he is really crapped the bed bad.
Right, which is possible, though, considering
his
track record's not amazing or anything.
I mean, I think he could even moderately crap the bed during camp and preseason and still be the week 1 guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's the potential there, but it's not unrealistic to say the pro-ready first-round quarterback against the journeyman veteran quarterback. That battle's not over day 1, and we'll just have to see. And Trubisky has to earn it. I think he's the favorite right now because he's the veteran guy, but he has to really earn that spot.
Okay,
that's my take on it. So I just know at some point we're going to be talking about Pickett had a great day, Trubisky had a poor day. What does that mean? We're going to have that conversation in the summer, and that may not mean it may not change anything, but the conversation for at least a day will come up.
Okay.
Dave, do you want to hit kind of one more? Or do you want to save the last 3 until Monday with Tuska, Vaughn, and Wallace?
Well, we haven't hit Tucker yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm my apologies to Jordan Tucker, the rookie undrafted free agent out of North Carolina. Again, tackle. We talked about this with a couple other guys, with Chaz Green, with Trent Scott. If this team keeps 9 offensive linemen, could there be a 4th tackle with 5 interior guys? That's possible, which kind of keeps that door open a little bit for a guy like Jordan Tucker. I admit I don't know a ton about his game overall. Excited to watch him this summer, but in theory, that spot may be there.
Yeah, this guy sort of has the Ramon Foster feel to him, right? This year of some sorts. Undrafted free agent out of a bigger program, and had North Carolina had more success. Does this guy at least get drafted? He's got to get. I think he's got to become more of a tackle build and shape first and foremost. Not the most athletic specimen overall on the tape. Now he's got experience, from his college career, and to me was a better run blocker than he was pass protector there. I mean, he's really more of a bull, kind of a big manhandle type of tackle, if you will. Look, the depth chart at tackle is not great. So at least where we sit right now. So, is it unthinkable that a guy like Jordan Tucker shows you enough that let's say they did keep 10 in total, that he could be number 10? I don't think that's unthinkable, especially when you look at what they have at tackle right now. I do think, however, that this is yet another guy that probably going to be looking at him as a week 1 practice squad guy.
You made the kind of baseline Ramon Foster comparison. Is Tucker versatile the way that Foster was? Has he played different spots at North Carolina?
I don't think so. I think most of his snaps came right there at right tackle.
Okay, so that'll be a little bit tougher.
And well, I mean, the thing on Ramon, could guard be in his future? I don't know. I mean, I'm the same guy that thought maybe Hawkins many years ago couldn't make that move. Maybe the big question on this kid was, well, we would have had a 5th round grade on him, but and that's because maybe we can think he can kick inside, yada yada. I don't know. There's nothing that I've seen so far, that it is sort of like, if indeed that's the case, it would be a Ramon Foster situation of, can he and do, that's one thing obviously to look for if you are ever reporting out there that says, well, Dave, you know what? They worked Tucker some at guard. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we're going to see that or not. So that do they consider him primarily a tackle? Is he going to have to make it strictly as a tackle? I mean, he is a bit big for that. It'd be interesting to see what he tips the scales at when he shows up.
Yeah, he may move to guard. I don't.
Sort of a sloppier tackle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Because Foster was kind of that same looking build. Tucker may move to guard. I don't know. I just didn't know if he had a background doing it, because a rookie moving positions makes that job all the more difficult. Plus at guard, like if you're going to make the 53, which I know those chances are low to begin with, but it's going to be a tackle because there's so many guys fighting for those guard interior spots with Hassenauer and Green, LeGlue, etc. It'd be even tougher to crack. So if he's going to have any chance to make it, it would be a tackle. So ideally he stays there, but he may move to guard. I have no idea. Yeah,
that's going to be one of the things to look for when you write these reports up.
Right. And of course, we're tracking the line. I mean, one of the first things I'll do is when they go through warmups is here's first team line, second team line, and just to get a lay of the land.
Look, they made him a priority free agent, so him and Mateo Durant, right? So there's something right there that their interest was high enough to do that. Do they think of him as a tackle? Do they think of him as a guard? His best chance of making the roster would be as a tackle, you would think. But we all know how injuries happen. And lo and behold, you can turn around and say, man, here he is competing for a tackle, so legitimately competing for a tackle spot.
Yeah. If he can show any sort of versatility, though, that always serves these players well. I think about John LeGlue last year, and he did just everything. He played everything but left tackle during training camp during the summer, and that created more value that put him on the practice squad that eventually led to the opportunity to call up and finish the year as his team starting left guard. So the more hats you can do, the more value you bring, that's going to be maybe the mission, but we'll see about Jordan Tucker.
In my notes here, he played mostly right tackle during the 3-year stretch that he played right tackle. Carolina offense finished in the top 3 in the AACC in total yards per game. That includes a school record 537.3 yards per game in 2020 that led the ACC and was 5th overall in the NCAA. Now they did have some good backs and all in that 2020 season as well too. So how much did that play into it and all? But big question mark with him. But he was a priority free agent for him.
All right. Looks like his freshman year, he actually played left tackle this freshman year and then moved and stayed at right tackle. So there was a little bit of background to left tackle a long time ago, but that's good for him to have in his back pocket at least.
Right.
All right, Dave, do you want to move on to one more set of 90 and 30 or save the final 3 for Monday? The next ones would be Derek Tuska, Tyler Vaughn, and Levi Wallace.
And let's knock out 3 more real quick.
All right, Derek Tuska. Special teamer, to me, ideally at number 4, kind of the Benny Snell of the Steelers defense. Special teams is fine. If you're seeing snaps on your side of the ball, I'm less enthused about that. But I think his chances are better than what people think. They liked him more than Taco Charlton down the stretch last year. Avery, Skipper, not going to be tremendous special teamers. There's kind of a niche path there for Tuska to be that number 4.
Kind of a little bit of a pedigree guy here too, right?
Was he a 5th round pick?
He was drafted, I thought. No, 7th round pick with him.
Oh, I don't know if I would call that pedigree to be a 7th round pick from a small school.
But he played, 10 defensive snaps and 24 special team snaps in the playoff loss at that point last season, and that was after on the heels of playing 247 regular season snaps on defense and 194 more on special teams. Obviously, once the team shipped away Ingram, that opened up, opportunity with him. The biggest thing that stuck out to me with him last season was kind of as the season progressed, he did kind of have a few moments as a pass rusher. And that to me is kind of the most encouraging thing when it came to him, especially when you look at the depth at the outside linebacker position. And, if you're going to be on the bottom of that depth chart, you better play some special teams. And he does. They're going to be interesting to see with how he progresses in training camp this year in the preseason here, because they really need somebody to step up on that outside linebacker depth chart. If they don't, then they're going to have to go outside the organization come week one. But it's kind of a to be determined with him. If they don't go out and get anybody, you like his chances of making the roster. However, if they do go out and add a veteran outside linebacker, maybe he doesn't make it and ends up starting a week one on the practice squad. But the only thing that the real positive with him, I think, was him able to help you some on special teams, and his pass rush later in the season seemed to have some improvement.
The other aspect that no one talks about because it doesn't stare you in the face when it comes to guys like Tuska was, remember, he was signed over midway through the Steelers season in the sense of signed, week 2, week 3? When did Tuska come on board? It wasn't obviously at the very beginning of camp, correct?
When was it?
I mean, it was during the season whenever he got brought over when the injuries started to hit, when, Watt had issues, Highsmith had a groin issue. I think they both missed the Bengals game. The pass rush was anemic. I think Tuska was already on the roster at that point.
Well, he was signed September 1st.
Okay. But still, I would say,
squad.
Right, just even missing OTAs and training camp and just trying to catch that moving train pretty quickly is a tough thing to do. And so when you have a full off season, and maybe this is more applicable for some other players like Montravius Adams that signed much later in the year, but I think just having that full reset and coming in from the start of the season with a team is good for the player. And so I think that'll just help accelerate his play and growth a little bit.
Right. I mean, having a full off season means something, a full training camp. I mean, he's going to get a shot for sure. I mean, you're not going to be shocked if we're sitting here in week one and he's the number 4 outside linebacker on the roster, right?
Not at all. In fact, I'm going in with the assumption he'll be that guy. Not that I'm going to guarantee it. There's a lot of competition there. Tuska's upside is not terribly high, but that's my belief heading into training camp.
Right. Mine as well.
Let's see. Next here on this list, Tyler Vaughn's the receiver, fellow reserve future contract. Was he the guy that was on? No, that was Rico Bussey that was on practice squad IR for most of last year, but I think he might have been on the COVID list. Vaughn's was briefly. And so don't have a ton of information on Tyler Vaughn's, but we'll see how he looks in camp.
Yeah, former USC product. He did return a handful of punts, I think, for them. Caught a lot of balls for them. 222 passes. What did James Washington catch during his college career? You remember off the top of your head?
I can look it up. I don't know the number. Probably a fair amount in those.
I know it was
big,
over 200, wasn't it?
Games. Let's see. It was 226.
All right, so very, very close there. 222 and 226 overall as far as college production. He had 20 touchdowns at USC, returned some punts there. He had 5 tackles. I didn't go track them down during his college career, but I would imagine a handful of those probably came on special teams. 6'2", 184 pounds. The fact that he spent so much time on the Steelers practice squad last season is probably a good sign overall when it comes to him. But it's hard to imagine with the logjam that they have at the wide receiver position that he will make the 53.
Yeah, that's going to be a really tough group to crack. Practice squad, they're keeping 16 guys in the practice squad this year, so there will be many spots available to these guys. And so, you don't want to count that out, but 53 is going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, he's just not very dynamic on tape, How
did he test coming out? You know what his testing was?
I don't think it was great. If you have to look it up there.
Okay. I'm guessing it wasn't anything.
Yeah, he's not a very sparky guy, I don't think, overall.
Looks like at his pro day in 2021. Yeah, you're definitely right. They 4.69 40 at a pro day, no less. 31.5-inch vertical, 10-foot broad, 7 reps on the bench, 7.153 cone at 6'2", $184. So it's not like he's a super big dude either. He's got some height to him, but not size. And so that doesn't bode well. But you get into camp with the pads on, you see how he looks.
Okay.
And then finally, Levi Wallace signed over from Buffalo, mentioned earlier, 2-year, $8 million deal, same deal as Ahkello Witherspoon. Again, how they all fit and how they look, I'm not quite sure. To me, Wallace is a little, I don't know, Bryant McFadden, a little outside corner William Gay-like, where he's a smart player, going to be physical, play the run well, has been productive overall, but not a high-end cover corner.
The thing with him, once again, is he is where he is because of how he played in Buffalo after Tre'Davious White went down there. I think he's better against the run than Witherspoon. More willing tackler and all like that. Look, they're going to have some questions in this secondary, and I guess the biggest question is with him is he the starter in base opposite Sutton?
Right. I think I wrestle with that a little bit, but short answer, I think it probably should be for the run defense. But at the same time, you worry about you still got to cover Jamar Chase, whether it's 2 tight ends or one tight end on the field, and you want to make sure you have high end cover guys because teams will throw the ball in any situation. So I do struggle with that a little bit.
It comes out of obviously a nice program originally out of Alabama, reunites with Mika Fitzpatrick in Pittsburgh. I got to be honest with you. I am not as high on Ahkello Witherspoon in 2022 as I am Levi Wallace. I just think Levi Wallace, pound for pound, pass run. I think in the tape that I've watched, I view Wallace as the better player of the two.
I get that. I think he's the more consistent player, the more well-rounded player. But if this secondary wants to work, they need a guy like Witherspoon to cover the elite receivers, the Jamar Chases, the whoever they're going to face this year, the high-end guys. And I don't think Wallace is really going to be that guy. He's a number 2 the way that he was in Buffalo opposite Trey White. I think Cam Sutton's a number 2 overall. And Witherspoon has the athleticism and coverage ability and potential to be a number 1 corner. Now he's got to be more consistent and show that all the time, but they need Witherspoon to really work.
When you get 6 games into this season, do you feel like there's going to be noticeable one getting a lot more playing time than the other between? In other words, they're going to fill I think they're going to fill this thing out at the start of the season, but I wouldn't be shocked if we get into week 6 or so where and either Witherspoon or Wallace is getting a hugely predominantly amount of playing time over the other.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know exactly.
Obviously, sub package. You're going to probably have all 3 of those guys on the field.
Right. If not, that someone got hurt or there some other disaster happened. So it's kind of a question of what's going to happen in base. I mean, yeah, I really don't know how it's going to go. I think it's a really interesting question. Will they rotate even in base? Will they kind of flip out? I think Witherspoon and Hayden were kind of doing that late last season. I don't know if that was because Hayden was trying to work his way back from injury or whatever the case was. I think it'll be a rotation to start, and how that looks, I really don't know, but I'll definitely report on it and try to find out.
Look, here's the thing. You hope the rush is good enough that because, rush and coverage goes hand in hand, that kind of thing. This team can get, as long as you're not getting beat up over the top the way Pierre was last year, and that's a big if, obviously, when you're dealing with Chase and some of these receivers that the Steelers are going to face there. But if the front stays healthy and does what they're supposed to do, then I think this secondary can survive with those 3 guys out there.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I know that's the intuitive thing, but I think there's a lot of examples in Pittsburgh of that not always working out. Like the secondary was not good enough last year, despite this team, again, leading the league in sacks. And the year before Mika Fitzpatrick got there, so 2018, they led the league in sacks, and the secondary was pretty abysmal. So these guys have to be able to capitalize on those moments, but I don't think it's inherently, well, the pass rush gets home, so the secondary will look great. I think we've seen too many times where that has not always been the case.
All right. Long and short of circling it back to Levi Wallace here, I think he's got the prospects of being one of the brighter spots in the Steelers secondary in 2022 over a guy like Witherspoon. That's where I'm placing my money at.
Yeah, I think Wallace will have a good year. I think he'll be a fine player, but I think if this team wants to be a top defense, they need Witherspoon to be that high-end cover guy. If not, that's going to be a very obvious, weak spot and blind spot in this secondary, in this defense.
Okay.
All right, Dave, anything else you want to talk about today? We'll save the last two, 90 and 30, for Monday's show. I think we should do Monday's show and kind of get back to the Monday, right, Wednesday, Friday vibe and rhythm of it all. So we'll save, what do we have here? Jaylen Warren, the Watt brothers, Cody White, Akella Witherspoon, and Chris Wormley to finish this thing out. All
right, should we get to some emails real quick here? Ian McCullough writes in, Dear Dave and Alex underscore Kozora, how much would it cost to purchase 15-year naming rights to the terrible podcast? Has anyone from Heinz contacted you about this? A giant ketchup bottle might look good on your logo. Thanks for the terrific off-season coverage. I can't wait to hear the punting machine hang times when camp starts there. So Ian, thanks for that. No, Heinz has not contacted us about naming rights for the podcast, and I'm going to go out on a limb and bet that we don't hear from them.
I think we could afford the Steelers Depot 3-yard line. You've entered the Steelers Depot 14-yard line. Like, we'll take one little plot. That'll be our angle, I think, Dave.
The Steelers are on the 47-yard line, brought to you by...
Yeah. The 46-yard line, that's somebody else. But 47, that is us.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't put it by the NFL to sell sponsorship for
right.
for that kind of stuff there. Don't rule that stuff out.
That's true.
Let's see. Eric Johnson writes in from Altoona. Hey guys, one name to add to the list is Eric Green. Oh, this was the wasted talent topic here. Huge, fast, very good hands. He was practically uncoverable, but let other things have more priority than football, and wound up, I think, with Miami, he says. So he views Eric Green as kind of a wasted talent in Pittsburgh.
You would know the answer to that better than I do. I mean, he had a really good rookie year, and then obviously he only played 4 or 5 seasons in Pittsburgh and then left. So I'm not sure what was the part that was wasted, though. I guess he's alluding to some other issues that I may not be as familiar with.
Yeah. Didn't he? I forget what the deal. What was the deal with him in 1992 with Eric Green? Was he?
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Let me double check real quick here. I mean, I obviously talked about him not too long ago as part of talking about what prospects there are for Freiermuth this upcoming.
Looks
season.
Like 6-game suspension
Steroids,
for violating
that's right.
drug policy. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, yeah, that's a good name to throw out there.
But overall, he was. I don't feel like he was a wasted, living up to his potential. I mean, yeah, obviously you're mad that he missed the games that he missed in 1992. What was he, like 2-time AP? Got some votes for AP Rookie of the Year, right? Didn't he? Offensive
I
Rookie
imagine.
Of the Year?
I don't know.
Yeah,
but
he came in
right.
5th in voting in that. Pro Bowl twice in 93 and 94, his final 2 seasons. I don't know if I would list Eric Green as kind of being wasted talent or whatnot. And he obviously left to be a free agency for more money.
All right, fair point. I think you can answer that better than I can, and I think that's a good assessment.
I mean, that's not the first thing that really comes to my head when I think of wasted talent, so to speak. There. Let me see if I can get a couple more in here real quick. Let me sort this real quick here.
Yeah, and then again, we'll be back Monday. We'll do a live stream Monday evening. We'll have the podcast Monday afternoon, and then do Wednesday to recap everything that happened during Tuesday report day. And we'll do it maybe Tuesday night. We'll record, so Wednesday I can get out to camp there extra early.
All right, Jim Bendis has a question. Could you please explain the cash over cap loophole? He says, I don't understand it. People are telling me that the Steelers are able to use some of the stadium naming rights cash toward players' salary, and it does not count towards the cap because of this loophole. He says, is this true? Jim, I imagine you probably got that from another blog or Steelers podcast or whatnot. Somebody has misled you somewhere, Jim Bendis. Here's the thing with the naming rights and the cash that teams receive that, and kind of where that really kind of helps. And that's in the aspect of, you hear about the players that get guaranteed money as part of their contracts, and like the first 2 or 3 years guaranteed. I think it's something like anything over like 15 million. Threshold that a team has to put fully guaranteed money into escrow. So in other words, that money's guaranteed, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously if teams have more money coming in from the outside, funding like naming rights and all like that, that helps them in the aspect of making sure that they can properly fund escrow and guaranteed money amounts. It does not impact the cap whatsoever. The cap is the cap, and there is no funding, naming rights, cash kind of loophole when it comes to the cap. And additionally, as we talked about several times, teams over a certain amount of period of time have to spend 90% of the annual cap amount in actual cash dollars there. So naming rights getting naming rights does not give them like a beat the cap kind of loophole there. So whatever Steelers blog or podcast that you got that from is absolutely off the mark there. Where it theoretically helps is the funding of guaranteed money in escrow that way there. So, is a team more apt to maybe give a player fully guaranteed 3-year contract if they have more cash coming in on the back end? You see what I'm saying, Alex? Am I explaining this?
I do.
Explaining this kind of in enough layman's terms there. It's more, it gives the team more cash to be able to do things with when it comes to funding guaranteed portions of contracts. First and foremost, that's where it really helps the most. Now, teams take on other ownership groups and have more owners come in that that obviously help that way. But having stadium deals, the larger they are, to me the biggest benefit of that is the whole guaranteed money. Putting in an escrow type aspect of it. There is no unfair advantage cap wise, though. That's absolutely false. I hope I explained that right.
Right. There is no loophole. And that was the conversation. And that's what made the Deshaun Watson deal all the more surprising, because that's fully guaranteed. So all of that money had to get put in escrow the second he signed the contract. I think I'm correct in saying that, right?
Right. There's something about 50. I forget if it's 15 million. Once a team gets past an annual year of over 15 million guaranteed in total, or if it's 15 million on one contract. I had to go back and look at that there. I know 15 million stuck out to me there, but I mean, regardless, when you're talking about that kind of money with Watson, all of it's got to be escrowed out. That's a lot of money,
Yeah. And I know that we talk about cap so much because that's our focus, but for the teams, cash is a pretty important thing as well, because they got to eventually, they have to pay the actual money.
Sure.
And so like cash matters to them. And I got in this discussion yesterday about, the sponsorship. And of course, the Rooneys took the Acrisure deal because it was so much money. And people were saying, well, the Rooneys, they're just greedy. They're worth $3.4 billion. Your net worth is not always what you have liquid in terms of cash available to you and stuff like that. So this stuff matters. This stuff is going to help. And let's say that Kenny Pickett is an awesome player and the next franchise quarterback. And as you said, he wants some mega deal in 3 years from now, whatever the numbers are going to be. And there's a large chunk of that fully guaranteed, or maybe totally fully guaranteed if that's the landscape at that point, you're going to need some cash laying around to put that in escrow. And so cash to us, when we talk about it, doesn't matter a whole lot, but to the Roonies, the guys that actually have to pay it and write the checks, cash matters a whole lot.
Right. When you have all these contracts on, building up with the guaranteed money, that you got to have that money in escrow. That adds up over time, and right. They had, the revenues coming in from the NFL and the naming, and the TV packages for the league as a whole and that, but that's why even the Bengals now are on the verge of having a naming rights of Paul Brown Stadium.
And does
you almost
have
to now.
Right. Does the fact the Steelers are now kind of transitioning to the fully guaranteed years in a contract, that probably plays an impact on the escrow and the cash flow as well, too, correct?
Right. They're probably resigned to the fact now that that's why they probably had to do a better deal than maybe what Heinz was prepared to offer him. You got to take the best deal in that spot when you're having with all these big name players now, at least wanting the first 2 years fully guaranteed, and oftentimes 3 or more, especially when you're talking about quarterbacks and all like that. So we're moving, and with the league, assuming COVID doesn't resurface or anything, and these new TV deals, I mean, these contracts are going to explode. I mean, you already see the wide receiver market, what's going on right now, right? I mean, you got to be able to fund these things in escrow on the guaranteed money. The teams like the Steelers and the Bengals and the Packers that have gotten away so long of trying to skirt, more than just the first year money being fully guaranteed, that's about to go out the door now. Now, obviously, we saw the Bengals not reach a deal with Jesse Bates. That might be more about positional value with them now, as opposed to guaranteed money overall, though. But I mean, you got a quarterback in Joe Burrow, right? That's going to have to. You think Joe Burrow's going to?
Kyler just got $46 million. What is Burrow going to get?
Right. And I think Kyler's got at least like 106 or 107 fully guaranteed of that. I mean, Burrow's probably going to crush that at some point. So get ready to hear the Bengals fans all complaining about whatever they name Mike Brown Stadium, because there's no way around it now. And teams are almost at a disadvantage by not having that kind of cash flow now, unless the ownership group just has endless. The
Walton family, the Walmart, they just bought Denver. Right. They have money for days.
Or like the Cronkies out there in LA, right?
Yeah, right. Now, again, none of this is to say that we're playing a tiny violin for the Rooney family. They have generational wealth. They're good. I understand that. I'm not pretending like they're struggling, but we just recognize that it's a business. Cash is important. And if Acrisure is offering, let's just say, double what Heinz was offering, of course, Rooney's are going to take that deal. That's just business.
But Jim, wherever you're hearing that, he says people are telling me that the Steelers are able to use some the stadium's naming rights cash towards player salary and does not count towards cap. That's false.
No, that's not, ludicrous idea. There's no loophole. That's just silly.
Let me see if I can find any more here. I think we got all of them there, Alex. I think we're caught up there heading into the weekend here.
All right. Well, good deal. Like I said, we'll come back Monday and I guess we're back to the 3-day podcast.
Right.
That is the official start of the season. It's Steelers season when we're going 3 days with the podcast.
All right. Until Monday, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, please go to SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upright navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button for $25 for 1 year. You can have an ad-free version of the site as well, too. Ran almost, I think, hour, 50 minutes today here. Not too terribly bad, but we'll be back on Monday. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.